This is my camera monitor. It plays a live feed of whatever my camera's seeing, so it's easier to pull focus. And lately I've been using it in kind of a non-standard way. Normally you stick a monitor right on top of your camera rig. A common solution for content creators that are in front of the camera is to mount it this way so you can pull focus when you're in front. For me, that doesn't usually help because most of the time I'm working here on the desk and the camera's behind me. I'm not looking at it. So these days I just have it on a really long HDMI cord and I run it all the way over to the desk. This simple setup works pretty great and it's quickly graduated to a every single shoot kind of use case. However, this separated setup does cause an issue for me in battery life. Normally you'd have your monitor running off of whatever big battery you have set up with your camera, but obviously that's not possible here. So I'm gonna build another power system for my monitor that I already did for my camera utilizing 20-volt drill batteries. And maybe we'll give this thing a goofy DeWalt themed paint job along with it. This project started out with a pretty long 3D print that actually went surprisingly well considering I cranked the speed and did it with no support material. Not to mention also the part cooling fan on my 3D printer is currently broken. This part will function as a clip for the DeWalt battery and a case for the voltage regulator. Alright, we're ready to start working. Let's see how well it takes a battery right off the... Oh! It actually clips right in. This print's kind of rough. It's gonna need some smoothing right here for that clip to slide in a little nicer. And this massive overhang is a total mess because no support, but that's internal, it doesn't matter. I think pretty much all I'll have to do is wire this thing up and find a good way to mount it to the back of this monitor, and that'll be a nice little robust system. All right, let's start cleaning this up. First things first, I'm gonna get that little ramp taken care of. It's actually kind of fraying apart. I did a bad job with my print settings, but I can just melt all that plastic together to give me a better base to work off of. It's not gonna win any beauty awards, but what have I ever made that has? Oh, that's way better. Feels solid. And I just get some of the stringy stuff out of there. That ought to be fine. It just needs enough clearance to put the step-down converter in here. So the way this thing is gonna work, the battery spits out about 18-20 volts. The monitor will take 5 to 17 volts. That's kind of a wide range actually. But regardless, to not fry the thing and to make it run as power efficient as possible and get the most battery, I'm gonna use a voltage step-down converter. This will take whatever input and put it out to a set voltage. The battery wires up to that and then that goes out into the monitor. Now, to be honest, I was not expecting this wide of a voltage range. 5 to 17 is pretty crazy. I wonder, does it operate the same at 5 volts as it does at 17? Because like, if we can get effectively 3 times the battery life out of it, I will take that happily. Right now it's running on 7.4 volts. Now with these voltage step-down converters, they do get slightly less efficient the more you're stepping it down. 18 down to 5 is not insignificant. So we'll see how well it performs. In any case, I'm sure it'll be better than my NPFs. And a big reason I'm doing this, honestly, is because I'm just not that bought into the NPF battery system. I have more of these power tool batteries, and that's already what I'm using on my camera, so it just makes everything more consistent. Okay, that voltage regulator's sitting in there nice and flush now. So I think we can move on to wiring some stuff. We're gonna need 2 little metal pins to go in there in contact with the battery. I'm just gonna cut those out of some scrap metal like I did on the last version. This piece of steel should do. Just gotta flatten it out a bit. I'm just gonna scratch out some rough cut marks. Now I have my little battery pins, and I just put little holes in them to run a wire through, round off the edges, and they'll work fine. It's always fun to repeat a project for the second time and be able to do it way faster. I've already made all the mistakes. Well, not all of them, I shouldn't say that. But I've found some mistakes that hopefully I won't make this time. Like, I just want to get a bunch of solder flowing on these pieces early. These pins are going to get melted into the 3D print, so it's way easier to do the wiring ahead of time. Alright, that's in there pretty solid. Soldering is still not my strong suit or my favorite thing, but I've had way more success stories with it than failures so far. It always struck me as something that you had to be really skilled to do, but it's actually pretty simple. Like, I'm using a $7 soldering iron that I just melted plastic with, sticking wire to a piece of steel from an old fence post, and somehow it's actually going smoothly. That should do the job. I'm just gonna widen these little holes all the way down till it's flush, and then I can adjust the final position later. That actually looks pretty decent. This is looking lovely. And it's in DeWalt yellow too. Shout out to the guy that sent me this yellow PLA in my PO box. Those positions seem good. Positive and negative wires get tapped into the buck converter. Let's check if it's working. Hey, 20.4 volts. I'll set it to like 7.5 to start. Oh, and my monitor battery just died. That's poetic for this moment because we should be ready to crack this thing open. Find a way to get power from these plugs into this thing. So there's 3 potential ways to get power in here. I could use the USB-C port, but I don't know if I have any simple 2-pin USB cables. We can tap into the NPF pins, which would be pretty easy. Or there's these Canon battery pins that I've literally never used. It would be pretty easy to just solder up to those, and that would work fine. Now, I don't want to complicate this project more than necessary, but in theory, I could come up with an NPF plate that allows this entire adapter to just slot in as if it were an NPF battery. And although it is more work, it's probably the most elegant solution. Now, that would require designing and 3D printing a whole new part and figuring out some kind of metal thing that wraps around these to contact. But I have this. This is just a smaller NPF battery that's kind of useless to me, and I don't think it's ever actually worked. So if I can crack this open and reuse the bottom plate, take the cells out of it, that might be a really fast way to get this done, and it'll be higher quality, really. So let me just try to crack this open without blowing up the battery. Aha. Not too bad. And then it looks like the batteries are just connected to those pins with these little metal strips. So I'm just gonna cut those. And maybe these battery cells can be revived for some other project. Boom. Yeah, that works pretty nicely. This thing is kind of flimsy, not much strong material to be a mounting point. So I'm just gonna melt in some PLA, I guess. Originally, my plan was to open the monitor and just tap wires directly into the circuit board and just like feed them out through a hole in the case somewhere else. But I like this idea of just basically making a DeWalt battery to Sony battery adapter effectively. Okay, so now I just have to solder up a wire to one of these tiny little metal things. Meh. Call that good enough. Then we can just heat shrink it to seal it all up, plug it all into the step down converter. All right, now I'm just gonna melt these 2 pieces together. Hopefully it doesn't interfere with any clearance on anything, but I think we have some wiggle room. Fill that in a touch more with some PLA. Somehow this actually feels pretty solid. Moment of truth, let's see if it still slides on. And it does. Okay, so at this point, if I have it set to the right voltage, and it's at 7.4, this should power on. Oh my goodness, it is. This is so cool. It's a power tool monitor, and it sits at a nicer angle now for viewing. The real question though, can I squeeze some extra battery life out of this by running it at 5 volts? I don't really want to push it too much, so we'll go like 5.3, and will that power the monitor? Yep, it's turning on. Maybe it is just baseline 5 volts and it has a step-down converter in it itself. And there we go, I have my monitoring back. I could just call it done right here, but I still kind of want to do that paint job. I'm gonna open the case and paint part of it yellow. I gotta say, it's a strange experience to be checking focus on a shot of you disassembling a monitor on the monitor you're disassembling. But here we are, that is in fact what I'm doing. I don't see any screws, so it's gotta just clip apart somehow. Doesn't seem to be glued though, at least for my sanity. There we go. Give the whole thing a light scuff so the paint has something to stick to. I'll roughly tape off this area so it doesn't screw with the battery sliding in. Nothing too precise though, I don't care that much. Not even gonna primer it. Should be fine. If it wears through, Black fits with the color scheme anyway. Oops, there's an HDMI port there. A little bit of tape for that. All right, that's pretty yellow. This was a great, fun little quick project. All in all, start to finish, not including paint drying. I only spent 4 hours on this, and that's including all the talking to camera. So literally the 3D print itself took longer than the entire rest of the project. And this is something that I'll be using every day for basically every shoot. As for battery life, I haven't tested it yet, but I ran this exact same system on my camera. I think I was getting 8 or 9 hours off of one of these 2 amp hour batteries, and that was on 8 volt. We're running 5 volt here, so it should be like 10 hours. It's easily all day. I know it's a little goofy. I know there's 3 different shades of yellow on here, but I think it's hilarious, and it's legit pretty useful and pretty cool too. Anyway, that's all for today. That's my little project. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time, and I will see you tomorrow.